a neuroscience-based understanding of a silent condition. Depression is one of the most misunderstood conditions in the world. It is often described as sadness, negativity, or a lack of motivation. People are told to think positive, be grateful, or try harder. But depression is not a failure of mindset. It is not weakness. It is not laziness. Depression is a brain state. It is a complex biological, neurological, and emotional condition that changes how the brain processes information, regulates energy, predicts the future, and responds to life itself. To understand depression, we must stop asking, "Why doesn't this person try harder?" and start asking, what is happening inside the brain? Depression is not just an emotion. Sadness is an emotion. Depression is a system-wide shift. A sad person can still feel pleasure, motivation, curiosity, and hope. A depressed brain struggles to generate these states, even when life circumstances improve. This is because depression does not only affect mood, it affects thought speed, energy regulation, motivation systems, reward processing, memory, attention, the sense of self. Depression changes how the brain interprets reality. The brain's primary question: is life worth the energy? The brain is constantly making predictions. Is this safe? Is this worth effort? Is there a future reward? In depression, the brain answers these questions differently. The depressed brain predicts low reward, high effort, low energy return. As a result, motivation shuts down. This is not a choice, it is a calculation. Depression as an energy conservation state. One of the most important ideas in modern neuroscience is that depression may function as an energy conservation response. When the brain perceives chronic stress, repeated failure, loss of control, emotional pain, unpredictability, it may reduce activity to protect itself. Just like the body conserves energy during illness, the brain conserves energy during prolonged psychological strain. This looks like fatigue, slowed thinking, withdrawal, loss of interest. The brain is not giving up. It is protecting itself from further damage. The role of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for planning, decision-making, hope, perspective, and emotional regulation. In depression, activity in this region often decreases. This means future thinking becomes harder, problems feel unsolvable, small tasks feel overwhelming, negative thoughts feel inescapable. This is why advice often fails. The brain regions required to apply advice are underactive. Why logic doesn't work on depression. People often say, "You have so much to be happy about." But depression is not a logical error. The emotional brain and rational brain are not aligned. Even when logic says life is okay, the emotional brain says effort is pointless. This creates internal conflict and guilt. The person thinks, "I know I should feel better, but I don't." This increases shame, which deepens depression. Depression changes time perception. One of the least discussed aspects of depression is how it alters the sense of time. In a healthy brain, the future feels open. Time moves forward. In depression, the future feels closed. Time feels heavy. The present feels endless. This is because brain networks involved in imagination and reward prediction become less active. Hope requires neural energy. Depression reduces that energy. The reward system goes quiet. The brain's reward system helps us feel pleasure, interest, and motivation. In depression, this system becomes less responsive. This does not mean pleasure disappears completely. It means pleasure becomes harder to access. This is why depressed individuals often say, "I don't enjoy things anymore. I feel empty. Nothing feels rewarding." This state is called anhedonia. It is not emotional numbness by choice. It is reduced reward signaling. Why motivation collapses. Motivation is driven by dopamine and reward prediction. In depression, dopamine signaling is disrupted. Reward prediction is pessimistic. Effort feels expensive. The brain asks, "Why try if nothing will change?" This question is not philosophical. It is neurological. Depression and the stress system. Chronic stress plays a massive role in depression. When stress systems stay active too long, they damage the brain's ability to regulate mood and energy. Stress hormones interfere with sleep, memory, focus, and emotional stability. Over time, the brain shifts from adaptation to exhaustion. This is when depression often emerges. The brain learns helplessness. Repeated experiences of loss, failure, or lack of control teach the brain a powerful lesson. Effort does not matter. This is called learned helplessness. Once learned, the brain stops initiating action, even when opportunities return, not because it wants to fail, but because it learned that trying hurts. Depression is not always sadness. Some depressed people do not feel sad at all. They feel empty, disconnected, flat, numb. This is because depression affects emotional intensity in both directions. It reduces pain, but also reduces joy. The brain turns down the volume to survive. The body feels depression too. Depression is felt physically. Heavy limbs, tight chest, digestive issues, sleep disturbances, chronic pain. This happens because the brain controls the body. When brain regulation shifts, the body follows. Depression is not all in the mind. It is mind-body integrated. Why depression feels exhausting? Depression feels exhausting because the brain is working harder with fewer resources. Negative thoughts loop because the brain cannot resolve them. Decision-making feels draining. Everything requires effort. This is cognitive fatigue, not laziness. Depression distorts self-image. One of the most painful aspects of depression is how it alters identity. People stop seeing themselves as capable, worthy, or valuable. This is not a personality flaw. It is the brain's threat system dominating self-perception. The brain turns inward and becomes critical, not because it hates the self, but because it is searching for control. Why depression feels permanent? Depression convinces the brain that this state will last forever. This is not insight. It is reduced neural flexibility. When certain neural networks become rigid, alternative futures are harder to imagine. But rigidity is not permanence. It is a state. A crucial truth. Depression is not who you are. It is something your brain is experiencing. Brains change. States shift. But first, depression must be understood, not judged. What happens in your brain during depression? Neurochemistry, brain circuits, and why the mind gets stuck. In Part 1, we explored how depression is not simply sadness, but a full brain state, an adaptive response to prolonged stress, loss, or emotional overload. Now we go deeper. In this part, we will look inside the brain itself. We will explore how chemicals, circuits, and networks change during depression and why these changes make thinking, feeling, and acting so difficult. Depression is not one malfunction. It is a network-level shift. Neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers of mood. The brain communicates through chemicals called neurotransmitters. These chemicals do not create emotions directly. Instead, they regulate how brain regions talk to each other. In depression, this communication becomes disrupted. The most discussed neurotransmitters in depression are dopamine, serotonin, and glutamate. Each plays a different role, and none of them act alone. Dopamine, why motivation and pleasure fade. Dopamine is central to motivation, anticipation, and effort. In a healthy brain, dopamine helps answer the question, is this worth doing? In depression, dopamine signaling becomes blunted. This does not mean dopamine disappears. It means dopamine messages carry less impact. As a result, effort feels heavier, rewards feel distant, progress feels meaningless. This creates an experience where even small tasks feel exhausting. The brain is not choosing apathy. It is predicting low return on effort. Anhedonia, the loss of pleasure. One of the core symptoms of depression is anhedonia, the reduced ability to feel pleasure or interest. Anhedonia is not emotional coldness. It is reduced reward sensitivity. The brain still recognizes positive events, but they do not register emotionally in the same way. Joy feels muted. Curiosity fades. But the brain is not broken. It is underactive in reward processing. Serotonin, mood stability and emotional balance. Serotonin is often described as the happiness chemical, but this is misleading. Serotonin helps regulate mood stability, emotional flexibility, impulse control, and stress tolerance. In depression, these systems may become less efficient. This does not mean serotonin is absent, it means emotional regulation becomes harder. As a result, negative emotions linger longer. Emotional recovery slows. Stress feels overwhelming. This is why depressed individuals may feel emotionally fragile, even when reacting to small stressors. Glutamate, the brain's accelerator. Glutamate is the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. It drives learning, memory, and neuroplasticity. In depression, glutamate signaling becomes dysregulated. Some circuits become overactive, especially those linked to rumination and self-criticism. Other circuits become underactive, especially those linked to motivation and reward. This imbalance contributes to repetitive negative thinking, mental rigidity, difficulty shifting perspective. The brain gets stuck in loops. The amygdala, heightened threat detector. The amygdala is the brain's threat detector. In depression, the amygdala often becomes hyperactive. This means negative information feels more intense. Criticism feels overwhelming. Threat is perceived everywhere. Even neutral events can feel emotionally charged. The brain becomes biased toward negative interpretation. This is not pessimism by choice, it is altered threat processing. The hippocampus, memory and context breakdown. The hippocampus helps distinguish past from present and context from emotion. Chronic stress and depression can impair hippocampal function. This leads to difficulty forming positive memories, overgeneralizing negative experiences, and feeling stuck in the past. The brain struggles to update itself with new emotional information. Old pain feels current. The prefrontal cortex, reduced top-down control. The prefrontal cortex helps regulate emotions, plan actions, and maintain perspective. In depression, activity in this region often decreases. This reduces the brain's ability to challenge negative thoughts, regulate emotions, initiate action, and see alternative outcomes. This is why depression feels mentally paralyzing. The control center is underpowered. The default mode network, the loop of rumination. The default mode network is active when the mind is at rest, thinking about the self, the past, and the future. In depression, this network becomes overactive and rigid. This leads to excessive self-focus, repetitive negative thoughts, rumination. The brain becomes trapped in inward loops. Trying to stop thinking rarely works because this network is stuck in high gear. Why rumination feels uncontrollable. Rumination is not overthinking by choice. It is a failure of neural disengagement. The brain cannot shift attention away from negative material because regulatory circuits are weakened. This is why distraction often fails. The mind snaps back to the same thoughts. Depression and the nervous system, shutdown mode. Beyond the brain, depression affects the autonomic nervous system. Many depressed individuals are not in fight or flight. They are in shutdown. Shutdown is a state of low energy, withdrawal, and reduced responsiveness. The nervous system reduces output to conserve energy. This explains fatigue, slow movement, social withdrawal, and emotional numbness. The body mirrors the brain. Why rest doesn't always help. People often tell depressed individuals to rest, but depression is not cured by rest alone, because the brain is already in conservation mode. What it needs is regulated activation, not pressure and not collapse. Depression and sleep disruption. Sleep and depression are deeply intertwined. Depression alters sleep architecture. Some people sleep too much but never feel rested. Others cannot sleep at all. Poor sleep worsens emotional regulation, dopamine sensitivity, and stress tolerance. This creates a vicious cycle.
Sleep problems are not symptoms to ignore. They are central to the condition. Why thinking feels slow. Depression often causes cognitive slowing. Thoughts feel heavy, decisions feel impossible. This is because neural signaling efficiency decreases. The brain is conserving energy by slowing processing speed. This is not intellectual decline. It is temporary neural inhibition. Why depression feels so convincing. One of the most dangerous aspects of depression is how real it feels. Negative thoughts do not feel like thoughts, they feel like truths. This happens because emotional circuits dominate rational circuits. The brain loses perspective. But conviction does not equal accuracy. A critical insight. Depression narrows the brain's range of possibilities. It does not reveal reality. It restricts it. The brain is not broken. These changes are functional, not permanent. Neural circuits can strengthen, neurochemistry can rebalance, networks can regain flexibility. But first, the condition must be understood.
Identity, hope, healing, and how the brain learns to live again. In Part 1, we saw that depression is not a weakness or a mindset problem, but a brain state shaped by stress, loss, and prolonged emotional strain. In Part 2, we explored how brain chemistry, circuits, and networks change, trapping the mind in fatigue, rumination, and shutdown. Now, in Part 3, we turn to the most human part of depression: how it changes identity, why hope disappears, and how healing actually happens in the brain. Because depression does not only affect how you feel, it affects how you see yourself. Depression changes the sense of self. One of the most painful aspects of depression is not sadness, it is identity erosion. People often say, "I don't recognize myself anymore." This is not imagination. Depression alters brain networks involved in self-representation. The brain areas that help us maintain a stable sense of identity become dominated by threat, negativity, and self-criticism. The mind turns inward and begins to define the self through pain. Thoughts like, "I am broken," "I am useless," "I am a burden." These do not feel like thoughts, they feel like facts. Why the brain attacks the self. The depressed brain becomes hyper-focused on internal evaluation. This happens because the brain is searching for control. When the external world feels overwhelming or unpredictable, the brain turns inward, analyzing the self for causes and solutions. Unfortunately, in depression, this internal focus becomes distorted. The brain's threat system dominates self-perception, creating a harsh inner voice. This voice is not truth, it is a survival mechanism that has lost balance. Shame and depression are neurologically linked. Shame is one of the most powerful amplifiers of depression. Shame activates the same brain regions involved in threat and pain. When a person feels shamed of being depressed, the brain interprets that shame as further danger. This deepens shutdown. This is why telling someone to snap out of it is not just unhelpful, it is harmful. Why hope disappears in depression. Hope is not just a belief. Hope is a brain function. Hope requires the ability to imagine a future that is different from the present. In depression, the brain's future-oriented networks become underactive. This makes alternative futures feel unreachable or unreal. The brain says, "This is how things are. This is how they will always be." This is not insight. It is reduced neural flexibility. Depression collapses the future into the present. In a healthy brain, time feels open. In depression, time collapses. The present feels endless. The future feels empty. This happens because reward prediction systems are offline. The brain cannot simulate positive outcomes. Without simulated reward, effort feels pointless. Why advice feels meaningless. People often offer advice. Go outside.
exercise, think positively. These suggestions fail because the brain regions needed to act on them are underactive. Depression reduces initiation energy. Knowing what to do is not the same as being able to do it. This is why depression feels so isolating. The gap between intention and action feels impossible to cross. The body learns depression too. Depression is stored not only in thoughts, but in the body. Posture changes, movement slows, breathing becomes shallow, the face becomes less expressive. The nervous system adopts a protective, low-energy state. This is why just relaxing does not fix depression. The body has learned shutdown. Why depression can feel comfortably numb. People fear recovery, not because they enjoy depression, but because numbness feels safer than pain. When the brain has been overwhelmed, it reduces emotional intensity to survive. Feeling again can feel dangerous. This is an important and often misunderstood stage. Healing does not mean forcing emotion, it means rebuilding safety. Neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to change. Despite how permanent depression feels, the brain is not fixed. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. Depression is a learned brain state. That means it can be unlearned. But change does not happen through pressure. It happens through repeated experiences of safety, connection, accomplishment, understanding. Each small experience of safety, connection, accomplishment, understanding strengthens new neural pathways. Healing feels slow because the brain is cautious. It has learned that hope can hurt, so it moves carefully. Why motivation returns last. Many people expect motivation to return early in recovery. In reality, motivation often returns last. First comes slight emotional flexibility, then moments of relief, then brief interest. Only later does consistent motivation return. This is because dopamine systems need stability before they re-engage. This is normal. Therapy and the brain. Therapy works not because it gives advice, but because it creates new emotional experiences. Being understood regulates the nervous system. Naming emotions activates regulatory brain regions. Safety allows flexibility to return. Therapy helps the brain update its predictions. It says, effort can matter again. Pain is not endless. Medication and brain chemistry. Medication does not create happiness. It reduces extreme constraints. By adjusting neurotransmitter balance, the medication can create enough stability for the brain to relearn healthier patterns. Medication is not weakness, it is support. The role of meaning in recovery. Meaning is a powerful neurological stabilizer. When something feels meaningful, dopamine and emotional systems activate together. Meaning does not have to be grand. It can be connection, responsibility, creativity, helping others. Meaning tells the brain, this is worth energy. Why self-compassion is neurologically powerful. Self-compassion is not emotional indulgence. It activates safety circuits in the brain. Safety allows learning. Harsh self-criticism keeps the brain in threat mode. Gentle understanding allows healing. Depression does not define you. One of the most important truths is this: depression is something your brain is doing. It is not who you are. When the brain changes, experience changes. Identity returns. The return of emotional color. As depression lifts, emotions often return unevenly. Sadness may come before joy. Anger may surface. Grief may appear. This is not relapse, it is thawing. The brain is reawakening emotional range. Why relapse does not mean failure. Depression recovery is not linear. Stress can reactivate old patterns. This does not erase progress. The brain remembers healing pathways. Each recovery strengthens resilience. A final scientific truth. Depression feels permanent because the brain is stuck. But stuck is not broken. Stuck means awaiting the right conditions. Final closing message. Powerful YouTube ending. If you are experiencing depression, know this. Your brain is not failing you. It is responding to more than it could handle. With understanding, support, and time, the brain can learn safety again. Depression is not your identity. It is a chapter, and chapters can end.